So I'm about to visit my friend Ranbir over at San Jose Barbell right now, and he recently posted a video of him overhead pressing his body weight, and I was so blown away with it because I really want to improve my own overhead press. So let's see what he has to teach us in terms of his coaching, and I'm sure this is going to be a great learning experience for you as well. Hey everyone, it's Anand from UnderdogStrength.com, and today I finally got to meet Ranbir, who I've been following on Instagram for a really long time. And when I saw his video on his overhead press, I think his overhead press is so impressive, and my overhead press is so bad.
I don't know about that.
So I said, I have to come here and learn from you, and hopefully my audience, you guys watching, will also learn some great tips on how you can also improve your overhead press with it. So what do you got for me today?
Well, first of all, I just thank you for coming. It's good to finally meet you. I've been following you too for a while on Instagram too, so it was great. I was like, oh, you're local, that's awesome. So the first thing with the overhead press is, personally, I think it's one of the most badass lifts out of all of them. To be able to press weight over your head is that takes a lot of strength and coordination. It's always something that has kind of fascinated me, and it's a really good test and measure of overall strength. First, we can go over the technique, and then we can talk about how to go about increasing your press. And we'll just start off with the simplest thing. How often do you overhead press?
Right now, about once a week.
Once a week?
But it's like an accessory movement. It's not even because I'm training for powerlifting.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the simple things for increasing something that is important to you is, if something is important, do it every day or do it more often. We'll go into some of the programming things after we go over technique. So we always like to break down all the lifts as simply as possible, and then add the layers on top of that. So the first three things that we look on our overhead press are, number one is your elbow is always under your wrist. When you're either if your elbows are outside of your wrist and you're pressing like this, or you're way out here pressing like this, that's not gonna let you drive or transfer the strength from your body into the bar as efficiently. Another thing that happens with that is if the bar comes back here, right, and then the bar's back here, now you're putting a lot of stress on your wrist. And this is something that's very simple, but nobody pays attention. If there's any type of pain or discomfort, you're not going to be able to generate strength. That pain is going to stop you, or it's going to inhibit muscular contraction. So that's the simplest one right there. Get that elbow right under the wrist, and that bar should be as close to the heel of your hand as possible.
And do you recommend using wrist straps at all?
I mean, you can if you want to. So anything that makes you feel comfortable, we always say hey, if you feel comfortable doing something, then just do it. We're a lot of people are like, oh, if you use gloves, if you do this, it's well, what if that lets them go ahead and do something? Then that's awesome, right? We want people to be lifting weights.
Yeah.
So I think it's a personal preference. are you asking more in terms of like if there's like pain or something like that?
Yeah, more for pain, because I feel sometimes I get wrist pain when I'm pressing.
Yeah.
Especially if I let it, like
Ride
you
back.
said, slide back a little bit. But as long as I keep it near the base of my palm,
Yeah.
it should be okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say there's other things that would help the wrist pain, and I think you're right. Is like when you get that form dialed in, what you'll notice is that that pain goes away.
Yeah.
So the first thing is we want that elbow under the wrist, and we want that bar as close to the palm or the heel of your palm as possible. The second thing is when we're pressing, we want to squeeze our glutes and our quads as hard as possible. We're always getting better and learning more about our lifts. So maybe this is something like I'm experimenting right now with it, but something to revisit later on. But for vast majority of people, we want to squeeze our butt and squeeze our quads as hard as possible before we lift. That's during the entire lift. What that's going to do is obviously that's going to let you transfer that force into that bar more efficiently. Then the last thing, best thing, is going to be as you press, you want to be able to finish in a nice straight line all the way through. So from the bar, through the shoulder, through the hips, through the feet. So we don't want to be here, we don't want to be here, we don't want to be here, we want to be here. Those are the three big things that we look for in a press. One minor note that I would say is like, if gripping the bar like this, you just can't stay tight, or it causes shoulder pain or whatever, and it could also contribute to wrist pain. One thing that makes a big difference, and I use this, is you could go suicide grip or thumbless grip on the press, and that lets your shoulders be in a much more comfortable position versus this. Right. So that's one option right there.
Yeah, what I was actually talking to someone yesterday about this, that when you use a thumbless grip on any sort of pressing, it kind of externally rotates your shoulder.
Yeah.
And that's why people like to use a suicide grip on the bench, which is not recommended.
Yeah. Which I just side note, I only recommend the suicide grip. I don't even like calling it the suicide grip, but on the overhead press, because if that bar slips, which it should not, I've never seen it, but then it just falls. With a bench press, you use that suicide grip, and well, we know why it's called the suicide grip. I remember reading, there was like some strength article back in the day where it's like every year there's like 3 or 4 guys who die in like their basement because there's nobody around, and they're like, anyways, we're gonna focus on positive things. So for your overhead press, this time your overhead press looks pretty good. Try squeezing your glutes and your quads and not letting your rib cage flare when you press. So try to stay more tight and try to get that straight line. And racket. So there's a couple. So when I'm like coaching somebody, there's a couple of things that I'll look at. So when you're pressing, your elbows are a little bit outside. So maybe go a little wider on your grip, just outside your shoulders, so that as you're pressing, you can keep that elbow under the wrist. And then try the next set without the shoes. And then we'll throw some weight on here. Your press is pretty strong, so we can throw some weight on.
Is that 25?
This is 15s. Okay. So 25s on there.
And you said without shoes?
Yeah. So basically, the reason why I want Anand to take the shoes off is because anytime you have cushiony shoes, that creates instability. So a very simple rule, like, and anybody who knows a little bit about powerlifting, like, you want a solid connection to the ground. That's why the squat shoe is a piece of wood. Having that cushiony shoe is going to increase instability, which is going to decrease what your body will allow you to, or how hard your body will allow you to contract.
That's pretty interesting because I really like using my Nike Romaleos for squatting.
Yeah.
But I found that when I do overhead press, it kind of throws me forward a little bit. So I think you're right, because if I use something like a flat shoe, like a Chuck Taylor, I feel that it's really grounded in the ground.
Absolutely. When you're using the squat shoes, the only lift that I would have somebody use those is squatting. You don't want to use those for deadlifts, and then Olympic lifting, but that's not where we're focused on. Do you do any Olympic lifting?
No, I don't.
Yeah, so but outside, so for most people, you're gonna use it for squatting, and then for everything else, you want a flat shoe. And I personally like to lift barefoot if your gym allows it. It makes you feel really grounded.
So I'm gonna grip a little bit wider.
A little bit wider.
Maybe something like that.
With control. Slower on the way down than the way up. There should be a difference. 5 reps. When you are done,
Nice. Alright. Let's try one more thing. How does that feel?
Really good. I feel pretty solid, really grounded. Yeah, I mean, I often find it hard to balance at times.
Yeah.
But with this, it feels really good.
Yeah. Do you? So you're pressing about once a week. Yeah. Are you usually pressing in like chucks or like nose or nose? So that'll make a big difference for sure. The next thing I want you to try is, so I don't know if you can see this or not, but in your setup, go ahead and just set up one time and then unwrap it. And then come back.
Unwrap it?
Yeah, rack it. So this is something. So this is super important. Like, I mean, on all of your lifts, on your power lifts, it's all your setup, right? Like, if your setup is not tight, then the lift is not. You can't get tight after you unwrap it.
Right.
So this is a little bit trickier to get tight prior. So one thing that will help is get your rib cage down, and so your abs are turned on already. So now you're already tight. Get underneath the bar in a position where you can, when you stand up, you're in that pressing position. Versus if you're kind of under the bar like this, and then you step back, now you're not in as strong of a position as you could be.
Right.
And so it's almost impossible to catch or re-tighten once you unwrap. I mean, anybody, if you've squatted, once you unwrap, you know, like, oh, this is gonna be a good lift or not if you got tight. So try it again. This time, get that rib cage down, get underneath it, unwrap, and then step just like you would in a squat, and then go up.
Right. It's almost like bracing your core, right?
Absolutely.
Because if it's, you gotta keep everything neutral, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. So it's like all the other lifts. If you're not braced or, in your squat or your deadlift, you're leaking strength and power, and so you're not going to recapture that once you pick that weight up. So it's all about the setup, and this is like the trickiest lift to get to learn to set up, but I think it's just because we don't practice it as much.
Right. So I can try one. Much better.
Yeah.
Much better.
We'll try one more. Make sure we have our balance. Doesn't feel too hard. Try one thumb and then same thing in that setup. Keep your abs on, get that rib cage down, and then unwrap.
And do you use a belt when you press?
I don't. It definitely makes a difference. Like on random occasions I will, but for the most part, I'm not training at yourself.
So when you did your body weight press, were you using a belt?
No belt.
So that's really impressive because I guess a belt can help you brace harder.
Yeah. So do you follow Greg Milton? So I remember reading in one of his things, he says it will add 8 to 15% to your abdominal pressure, so you're gonna be stronger whenever you use the belt. But that's for sure for the people who know how to use it. There's a lot of people who don't know how to use the belt.
Really good. Yeah, I think this one worked for me with the grip. I think I was really able to get my elbows in this time.
That's the thing for a lot of people. It is going to make a big difference if they don't have the mobility or whatever. I want to try one more thing.
Okay.
So this is something that we do for all the big lifts, and basically it's just an isometric hold. That means you're just squeezing your muscles and not moving. So for this, we're going to do just a full body tension drill for like 3 seconds. You're going to lock out your knees, you're going to squeeze your butt and your quads, and you're going to punch down and flex as hard as you possibly can for about 3 seconds, and then shake it up.
Sure. And that's without the weights, right?
Without the weight, just standing where you are, making sure your tailbone is tucked, knees are locked out, and then contract everything as hard as possible. Glutes, quads, and relax, and shake it up. Now let's try another one. Try 2 and 3, same thing, thumbless rib cage down. And then squeeze those glutes and quads, same thing. Any difference? Or is it the same?
I think a little bit better than last time. Not that big of a difference.
Yeah.
I think we already like incrementally improved stuff, right?
So the reason we do that is strength is a skill. And for most people, so strength is just contracting muscles. And for most people, they don't have that practice. So if you practice contracting here, then when you go here, it's going to show up. Like it's going to have an effect. So sometimes that helps. This is the same reason. Like why do we do RKC planks? We do standing planks. All kinds of stuff. Basically, you're practicing that tension. We do lots of farmer carries. What are farmer carries? Farmer carries are basically planks while you're moving, right? So all that stuff contributes to your lifts. Because that lockout, like for a deadlift or whatever, or even for a press, that's just a plank. Like when I stand up with that deadlift, that's a plank. As far as like programming, we like to keep it very simple. So it's like if something is important, do it more often. So like I'll press literally every other day. But here's the thing, I never go towards failure or even close.
Right.
I will go up to where I feel like it's 80%, and I never want form to break, and I never want it to be a grind, because if you're gonna be lifting that often and you grind too frequently, then we have issues. Then we have problems.
Yeah, and you can't even do a lot of volume that way, right? Because you might do one set and it might feel really hard, but the other guy who's not going to failure is gonna end up doing a lot more work than you. So volume is like one of the main drivers of hypertrophy and strength.
100%. Volume is key, and so if you're just too beat up because you're grinding all the time, save the grinding for the dance floor, alright? Not for your lifts.
Awesome. So how long did it take you to get to your body weight overhead press?
So I really focused for the last like 2 months, where I was pressing like every day or every other day. So my press was hovering around 135 for a long time. And so within the last 2 months,
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Awesome, man. You know, like last week I did the same weight, or I think I did 5 pounds more than this, but it felt so much harder than today. So I can't wait to try these tips out myself. And I hope you guys learned something, because being able to do a body weight overhead press to me is so impressive, because I can't even press one plate and I weigh like 160. So I'm nowhere near body weight. I'm not even like 80%.
You're good there.
Yeah, but just using these tips and the same weight, it actually felt much lighter. So I can't wait to try this. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you're in Northern California or the San Jose area, then you gotta check out this gym. You know, don't go to a commercial gym, because that's not how you get results. If you want results, come to a real gym, because not only do you get to be coached by someone like Ranbir, you know, like even someone like myself who coaches other people, I learned so much today from him. But it's also the environment. That's why I always tell people not to train at commercial gyms. Go to a real gym and get real results. So Ranbir, thank you so much for taking the time today. And I hope this was informative. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and stay strong.